What's up guys, and welcome back to the channel. Today we are going to be doing another VR game review on the PlayStation VR 2. This is for the Twilight Zone VR. Now this originally came out back in 2019 I believe on the Quest, and it's only just released now on the PlayStation VR 2. I did have a bit of an early access period to the game, so I haven't played it since it's officially launched, so hopefully there's been some patches that might have fixed a few things. But this game was originally developed by Pocket Fun Games I believe, and published by Fun Train, the same people who brought us Tarzan VR and the Exorcist Legion VR, which I really love that one, and I can't wait for them to bring the next gen version of that out because I just love the original and I can't wait to see how that one goes. But we're here to talk about the Twilight Zone VR anyway. So I'd seen this one quite a few times and I always assumed it was more of a mini sort of experience rather than a full game, and it is comprised of 3 separate chapters all having a different story, much like the original 1950s Rod Serling show Twilight Zone, where every episode is a different weird and wacky story. And this one is the same. We have 3 chapters, all of each I would say about 45 to an hour long, depending on how long it takes you to get through them, difficulty wise and dying and stuff like that. So they're all very different in their mechanics and different ways of showcasing the weird world of the Twilight Zone. So I believe the PlayStation VR 2 version has upgraded visuals, haptics, and a few extra little bits that might have been added. The only thing I can think of them being is the filters that you unlock. So you have filters for like 1950s, 70s, 80s, and just all these color filters that you can put over the game, and like a black and white one and a noir one. So those are possibly the additions I can think of that might be the extras, but other than that it's mostly the improved visuals. I did see a video of the Quest 2 version in comparison to this, and it does look like they've done a really good job at porting the game and upgrading the visuals and the textures and things. So the only way I can do this really is break down the chapters and my enjoyment of them. I don't want to spoil the stories of them, but the first one has you in a sort of business complex, and it's nearly Christmas time and it's got all the Christmas music and the vibes, and I really love that. I wish there was more horror related around the Christmas period. But you play as a character who's trapped in this office, and there is a stalker who is trying to find them, and it has a really cool mechanic which I was not expecting at all, where you can actually record some of your voice and it actually becomes the stalker's voice, so it relays your own voice back to you, which I thought was really interesting, especially because I just wasn't expecting it. And it just it took me really by surprise, because when I was recording those lines I wasn't exactly trying to be this villainous person. I was actually quite subdued because I just wanted to get through to the game. So I was being stalked by the most boring villain ever, but it was my own voice, and I couldn't understand how it happened when it first happened. And that is the strong point of chapter 1. Also, with it being more of a stalker game, it's more like an Outlast thing where you're trying to hide on the desk, and you can physically do that by crouching down and just looking and through the gaps in the doors and stuff to see where the stalker is. So that is basically the first one. It has a bit of a Firewatch walking simulator vibe to it, because you have a radio where someone is in contact with you who's guiding you through this office complex to try and escape, and that all has something to do with the story and the characters. So I would say that is probably the best one gameplay wise, and just with the mechanics it was just really weird and I really enjoyed it. So the second one is set in sort of like a post-apocalyptic wasteland, much like the games like Metro, where you have to go out and use gas masks and filters, and if anything it's going to give us an indicator of how Metro is going to relate when Awakening comes out, because yeah, I was quite interested in the vibe where you have to switch out filters on your mask, and you have like a spud gun, you have a potato gun which you load every time manually, and I thought that was really cool how you did reload the gun. It felt quite satisfying, but overall it didn't feel like a shooter. It just felt like it was a game where a shooting mechanic was added just to make this chapter progress faster or make it more fun, because it was mostly just walking around and shooting these bug creatures, and the story was interesting, but it was just let down on a few too many segments where you were walking around in the sewers without any real guidance. It just kind of prolonged the gameplay, which could have been a lot shorter. Third one also had some cool moments as well, where you're in a house and it's kind of taking over and things are changing, and every time you wake up things are different, and it had quite a lot of cool aspects to it where just the rooms will be rearranged in non sort of real physical ways, like the table will be on the ceiling, and it was progressively getting more and more crazy, and I did like that aspect to it, but it didn't have the gameplay to sort of follow through with it. Like I said, when I first saw it I thought it was more of an experience, and it kind of borders the line between an experience and a game, and I think if they were to do this again with maybe a bigger budget and a bit more of a game development sense behind it, I think they could make something really cool with it being more interactive, or even if they did go full blown with it being more of an experience. From what I saw, the graphics were pretty impressive in the game. The textures are all pretty high res. My first thing I always do is kind of look at the textures on your hand, because they're usually the most sharp, and they really were. So It looks like they've definitely done a good job of improving this from the Quest 2 version, and it looked really nice throughout all 3 chapters really. One thing that they did boast in the press release was that there's going to be improved haptics, and the haptics were there, but honestly the craziest time for the haptics is when you're actually in the pause menu, and when you're pressing the buttons there, it feels really good, like where you press the triggers down, you don't fully go down, you have to really squeeze them, and that only seemed to be present really in the start menu, whereas in the gameplay it just wasn't there. There was certain haptics, but it wasn't as impressive as in the pause menu. So with it being like this immersive experience with the sound and things, I think they really could have done a good job at making the haptics more immersive in game, especially if you were to like be hiding under desks and stuff. You could have the headset rumbling, or when you were shooting the guns, just make it more impactful. So I do think they could improve the haptics in the game. I'm glad they're there in the first place, but like I said, when it was in the pause menu, it really striking, but in the game it just didn't really turn out as a really immersive thing. So overall, I do think this is quite a fun game. I think it's reasonably priced, it's not too expensive. You're looking at maybe getting 3-4 hours out of the game. So if you're looking for something, if you really like the Twilight Zone show, it might be worth checking out just to see how they've sort of translated it into a video game. Like I said, I do think this could do with either a sequel or like a new game where they really flesh it out and just put more of a budget and more of a, I don't know, more emphasis on the gameplay behind it. I think they could have something really cool, because I'm a big sucker for anthologies and horror anthologies, so they're really short, but I'd just like to see an anthology put into a game, because you get different experiences and different vibes to each one, and you can really utilize the headset to make use of those things as well. So those are my thoughts on the Twilight Zone VR. I had a good time with it. I just think if they learn everything from this one and the criticisms that some people have put against it, they could do a really good job at making a sequel in the future. And I really can't wait for them to bring out the Exorcist Legion VR 2, because that's going to be so cool. So thank you all for watching, guys. Let me know down below in the comment section what you thought about the Twilight Zone, or if you haven't played it, are you looking into playing it? Are you interested in it now after watching my review or watching some other people's reviews? Let me know down below. If you haven't checked any of the other VR content on my channel, I have a multitude of it, and there's plenty more coming, whether it be PlayStation or Quest or PC. So subscribe if you haven't already, and guys, I will see you in the next video.